Hey there! If you go out for a walk through a meadow or by a lake, you might think it's going to be a very peaceful experience, and it can be, as long as you don't look very hard. Once you really look around, you start to notice that everything is either trying to aggressively mate, kill something, or is living in terror. If you've ever watched a squirrel for a few minutes, you'll notice they're living in constant fear. Everyone wants something, and there's a battle going on right now to get it, even if you're unaware of it or choose to ignore it. And that's what we're going to talk about, so keep watching. There's two types of investors. Those who don't worry about the impact that an investment will have on the world, and those who do. Socially responsible investing sounds like a great way to describe the second class of people, but it actually already refers to something more specific. Socially responsible investing, or SRI, is a type of investment analysis where companies are excluded if they don't meet certain criteria. This type of investing screens companies that don't meet with an investor or group's standards. For example, if I think the banking sector is really bad and not to be trusted, I can just forget about that sector altogether and not invest in any banks. Seems pretty effective and simple. However, if you're not investing in a whole sector, particularly as a large investor like a mutual fund, you're completely taking yourself out of a position of influence on a company. So if you wanted to encourage a company to clean up its act or improve their products, you could encourage a company down a certain path if you were invested in that company. And you do that through voting or perhaps through other methods that we'll look at later. And that brings us to ESG style investing. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. This type of investing, by contrast, is supportive of companies that are working towards a certain set of criteria. It's inclusive of companies that may not be there yet, but are moving in the right direction towards positive change. So let's quickly look a little closer at what ESG would be exactly. Environmental factors could be things like deforestation, waste management, carbon emissions, things of that nature. Social would be data privacy, human rights, or customer satisfaction. And governance would be things like executive compensation, corruption, or political contribution. So SRI is a method of excluding companies based on certain criteria, whereas ESG includes or rewards, so to speak, companies that are doing well or are headed in the right direction. Both of these methods are valuable and have their place, however, I won't be referring to either of these topics exclusively. SRI and ESG style investing, especially when combined, sound pretty nice. So what's the catch? Both SRI and ESG styles of investing have become big topics due to millennials and high net worth clients desiring change in that area. For the most part, it's had positive outcomes, but mixing money and morality can often turn negative. There are at least three groups competing for dominance in the areas of both SRI and ESG, none of which are known for taking the ethical high ground, and all of which I would not invest in if given the choice. Funds with billions of dollars at their disposal hold huge potential power to affect change, both positive and negative. They can help bring companies into compliance with environmental issues or sway the outcomes of elections by simply withholding or providing investment money. Banks and governments, of course, have similar abilities. You may think it's a paranoid stance to take, but that's exactly what we're talking about here. It happens passively with SRI and actively with ESG. The idea behind both forms of investing, at least on a large scale, is to coerce businesses into playing by our rules. You may see that as positive if you 100% agree ethically with these groups, but chances are you don't, and may not even more over time as their power grows. Historically, throughout many religious sects, it is common for the positive effects of well-meaning groups to be corrupted by a few powerful people who wield supreme control. Such control cannot be obtained without the silent consent of the group as a whole. Influencing the ethics of an industry by controlling their funding is probably not exactly new, and can only be as ethical as those in control allow it to be. That's why I believe it is always best to make these decisions for yourself rather than have someone else do it for you. The power need not be blindly handed over to the few. What about the returns with this style of investing? There's a problem with gauging a company's performance based on its returns, which sounds strange, I know. But a company's performance and an investor's return on a share price often don't have a correlation. meaning that a company can do very well and you may not see it reflected in the share price. Or a company could be doing very poorly and you keep seeing the stock price going up. It's not uncommon. And it may not be that way over the long haul, but over a short period of time, like a year or a couple of years, it could be that way. Similarly, if you're watching a company and there's a terrible breach in ethics, which causes the stock price to drop, you may see that as a win for responsible investing. This company was doing something unethical and it got caught. That's great, it's a win. However, that may be a great time to buy shares in the company because now it's gone on sale. So is that a loss for impact investing? Share prices are constantly changing, so I don't think that you could accurately say that returns or a company's performance have a definite or immediate correlation. That said, some form of corruption within a company will inevitably bring a company down. So don't get me wrong, it will happen, but who knows when. For instance, look at a company like Enron. Things were going great until they weren't. Also, depending upon who you ask and when you start measuring, it's safe to say that most funds underperform the market over a long period of time. It's something like 85% of large funds underperform the market over a 10-year period. I wouldn't really be expecting SRI or ESG style funds to beat the market. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I have no love for hedge funds or mutual funds or anything of that nature. I think most of us should be individual investors and that most of us are capable of it. If you're capable of working, you're capable of investing. So what about the individual investors? Can it work for you? There's a lot of controversy as to whether it works or not. Some say no and that you should be purely investing for gain. Essentially, they think you should divorce yourself from your humanity. And then after crushing it in the stock market by investing in oil companies, go and take some of that money and invest it in a Save the Planet group. That, of course, makes no sense to me. But I've kind of put it into a way that should make no sense because I have a different opinion. So I'm building a little straw man. Other people say, yes, responsible investing is the most important thing. And they'll invest in something that doesn't make a lot of sense just to have an impact. And I don't find that method appealing either because I want to make money. For me, it's easy. I'm very black and white when it comes to morality. Can I use that term? So it's easy for me to pick companies that I think are not helping the world. And I'll admit saving the world isn't my main focus. I don't scour a company for past grievances. But if I find a company that I consider reprehensible, like Altria, they make tobacco, I just won't include them in my list of potential investments. And I'm not saying that you need to agree with me on that, but just that that's one very easy way. That would be SRI style investing. Other people will say, hey, that's a pretty tough game. I gotta be looking for opportunities everywhere that I can. I can't be limiting myself. I, on the other hand, don't have a problem with it. If a company's done something unsavory, I don't want to support it. And I just exclude them from the list of options. Just as I would if they had bad financials or if they were poorly managed. I know Warren Buffett has said something like, investing is tough enough without passing judgment on companies. But he also said that you look for 3 qualities when you hire someone: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if you don't have the first, the other 2 will kill you. To me, integrity is paramount. If heavily contributing to the deaths of people is the basis for your company, there might be a lack of integrity there. Putting a bunch of energy behind it, which is what money is, might be a problem. And in that regard, socially conscious investing is of paramount importance. There are real dangers to investing in a company that is not responsible. It's an extension of poor management or a lack of integrity. I think it's important to understand that money is energy. A lot of people will say money doesn't matter, and that's the point of a lot of TV shows and movies. And of course, TV shows and movies are made by the rich to pacify the poor. They always place love above money, whereas I think that how you use your money is an extension of how much you love the world around you. And in that case, money does matter. Why do I say that money is energy? Energy is the ability to do work. That's the scientific definition of energy. The ability to do work. Money holds energy or is energy in that it has the ability to get work done. If I want somebody to do some work for me on my behalf, I give them money and the work gets done. I don't have to do the work, I've transferred the energy. The money is no better or worse than I am. So when they tell you that money is bad, they're kind of telling you that you're bad. And maybe you are. If a person has a great moral compass and wants to help the many people in this world that need help, it seems great, but if that person has little to give, what kind of help can he possibly be? On the other hand, if a person has a lot of wealth and no desire to help, what values that person? Certainly the best option is to have a lot of wealth and to be generous, because you can't give what you don't have. And in a similar fashion, in the realm of governments, is socialism. And socialism as a form of government doesn't work, even though it's full of good intentions. Because it's like the poor man with good intentions. And there's a lot of historical proofs that people like to excuse, but that's just the way it is. And I assume I won't lose viewers by saying this, because if you're interested in investing, then you're going to be a little bit capitalist in your mindset already. But at the same time, capitalism without a giving spirit is just like the rich person. Both are awful. This is the whole point of the Dickens story, A Christmas Carol. And I'll probably do a video on that at Christmas time, but the point is, the best position to be in is a wealthy and cheerful giver. Socialist agendas cannot flourish without capitalism. And that's important to understand, but the worst thing you could possibly do is give your money to the government and expect them to get something done efficiently and effectively. I'm not saying we should have more socialist agendas, not at all, but that's why you need to be something more like a reformed Scrooge. You need to be both wealthy and giving. Being wealthy without having a giving spirit is repugnant, and we all know that. It's probably harder to grasp that being a giving person without having wealth is valuable only to deities. There's the story in the Bible of the widow's mites, or coins. Jesus is watching all the rich people give their donations, I guess at the temple or something, and this widow comes along, this old widow, and she puts in 2 coins, which would be the equivalent of like 2 pennies. And Jesus says, this woman's given more than anyone because most people give out of their wealth, but she's given out of her poverty. She's given everything, and that's powerful, and that's beautiful, and maybe I don't understand it, but it doesn't seem practical, and that's what I mean when I say being a giving person without having wealth is valuable only to deities. It just doesn't have a practicality to it. So you need to be successful, and you need to be a cheerful giver. And you're probably thinking, hey, you can't say that being rich is being successful. And it's not. There are many fields to be successful in. Raising children may be the highest calling on earth. But if you're constantly spending more than you bring in, there's an element of failure to that in most cases, at least in the realm of finance. So success in this case would be having something left over to invest and to give and to change the world with. And you should think of investing as a form of giving, because you're giving energy to these groups to accomplish a set of goals. So it should align with what you believe to be good and moral. And investing is not the only way to affect change. There's other methods like social pressure. Social pressure is always a factor, and it would be nice to believe it's organic. But we live in a world where influencing people is a science, and the masses are easier to reach than ever. It's probably not the best way to bring about change, in my opinion, and the idea of the forces behind it arising organically are highly suspect. Voting in elections is a way to influence people, of course, or more specific to this channel, voting rights held by shareholders in a company can affect change within the company. This becomes far more important when you're a major shareholder, as may be the case with a large fund. Purchasing products is often undervalued as a method of bringing about change. Nonetheless, you invest in a company when you purchase their products. That's the main way to invest, and one we all do. If you don't like something, don't support it. And if you do like something, go buy their goods. Charity is a great example of an investment that is used specifically to bring about change in the world, and it also highlights how important investment analysis is. There are a great many charities out there that are terrible, and I would never give money to. I think of charity as an extension of investing. We've already brought up the issues involved with using funds as a method of affecting change. However, it is a method, just not one that I can support. One of the best ways, in my opinion, to affect change is through your direct investments. I think it's second only to being mindful of the products you purchase, at least down here at this level. The more money and energy you're investing, the more powerful this method becomes, till it's far more powerful than any other method. So then you should ask yourself, do I really need to invest in this company? You're the decider. This is your money and your energy. Don't get all weak in the knees, man. If you don't like how the world is, this is how you change it. You may want to spend some time questioning what you want the world to look like. Currently, all of these ideas are being discussed at different levels of society. And if you're way down here, for the most part, the outcomes are being decided for you. I personally don't agree with a lot of the conclusions being made, like with overpopulation. When you hear one of the richest people in the world talking about overpopulation, you know he's not talking about his family. If doing your own investing means you have to spend time thinking about these issues, then I think it's time well spent. And you're already involved. You're already making decisions on a lot of these topics, whether you know it or not. If your car is gas or electric, you've made a purchasing decision. If you're buying Harvey Weinstein or Woody Allen's movies, you've made a decision. If you're shopping at certain stores because of someone's race, not because of the quality of their merchandise or service, you've made a decision. If you've invested in a mutual fund that owns stock in a company that you find distasteful, you've made a decision. What I'm trying to say is, having no opinion is still a decision. What you need to do is get your money right, sign up for an investment account, which I have a couple links to in the description below, and of course, above anything else, watch a whole bunch more of my videos. Goodbye. If you like what you saw, give me the thumbs up and subscribe. And don't forget what I told you.